happen, but remember, you've got to be funky.
Welcome to this week's episode of Between the Lanes, and we're back again this week with Chris Griffin. And just in case you are tuning in for the first time, go back and listen to the previous episode with Chris. What a great leader he is, and we had such a great time. We're just extending it to another podcast. So, Chris, welcome. We're glad you're here with us again, and I get to do the interview this time, not Todd.
Which is great. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here between the lanes.
Yes.
This time, I mean, we switched lanes here, right? I'm wondering if this lane's faster, but we're about to find out.
No, it's slower.
It's slower.
Yeah, it's slower. This is the senior lane.
Good.
I want to pick up on some things that you briefly discussed, talked about.
Yeah.
First thing I want to say is, you mentioned the father wound. Is there anything like a son wound?
Yeah, I think there is, for sure. There, in all the men that I've talked to and encountered over all these, 1 hour coffee talk, table talks that I've had, there are a lot of men who have been wounded by their sons, right? Who have sons that have either walked away or said some really hurtful, harmful things. And the fact is that fathers are still broken too.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not hard for a son who knows him really well to say the thing that will hurt him. Right. Just like in a marriage. I mean, just like in any relationship, you tend to hurt the people that you love the most. Right. Because you know them so well. And so when that kind of whatever it might be that stirred up in you comes to the surface, it's pretty easy to pinpoint it and hurt the other person if you're not careful. So, there's definitely been some son wounds I've encountered through those conversations.
Well, Malachi talks about the fact that in the last days, God is going to turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons, and I would assume that includes daughters, but to the children, and the heart of children to their fathers.
Right.
And I think in your role as men's pastor, do you see that actually beginning to take place? And if so, how would you describe the work there?
I would say, in a lot of the prayers that I've been a part of, a lot of the prayers I've been involved with, even when there's a corporate prayer, but even when it's just a one-on-one conversation with a man, with another guy who's praying for something, we hear a lot about prodigal sons. There's a lot of prayers for sons and daughters to return and children that have gone awry or astray in some capacity. And I would submit that the situations that I see healed the most are when the man himself, who's the one praying, submits further.
Yeah.
Right. All great leadership begins with submission, right? And just ask Jesus. and then that carries through. And when a man finally realizes that he's broken first and he submits to the Lord, it's amazing how prayers seem to get answered faster. Like it almost happens every time. Yeah. And yet, how many times do you meet with someone and they're praying for something and it doesn't happen? And you hear, well, I've been praying for this, but. Of course, when they say but, they've immediately discounted their prayer, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because you're basically suggesting you don't believe it anymore. But if you see people praying for something over time and it's not happening, it's typically because it's something that the person praying is not doing.
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot. And so to your question, am I seeing that happen more? I see it happen all the time with men who completely submit. I don't necessarily see it happen with men who just refuse to submit.
Yeah. Okay, so you were talking in the last episode when you and Todd were talking. You were talking about what I would describe as your style of leadership. You have these different hats that you wear as a CEO of a international business, as the men's pastor of a large ministry, and how would you describe, and do you see a difference between transactional leadership and relational leadership?
Yes, for sure. And I would say that my leadership style is far more relational, for sure. and whether there's more transactional things happening in the role that you're in or not requires a slightly different set of skills sometimes.
Yeah.
In my business, there's times when we need to be transactional. And fortunately for me, I think from the business standpoint, it's easy for me to step into a transactional role because I was trained that way. I went to school for it. I got my master's in it. I worked in businesses where there's transaction after transaction. And so I kind of know what it looks like. And so I can engage in that. But I would still submit it doesn't change who I am as a leader. Like I still would prefer to act in the relational manner and to get to know somebody first, to understand somebody first. It's part of the tenet of one of our businesses today is that we want to, all of our relationships, we say this all the time, everything begins with a conversation. It doesn't begin with me telling you what you should do. It doesn't begin with me then suggesting, here's the answer for you. It starts with, what are you really looking for, right? Which I would submit is the same thing we do in men's ministry too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So let me just give you a scenario and tell me how you would lead from your leadership perspective. You've got a person in your organization, and they're underperforming. They're underperforming, and you need to get something out of them. Would you focus on the transaction, or would you focus on the relationship?
The relationship first.
And
for
how,
sure.
how would you lead into it?
I would immediately say, something doesn't seem like it's working here. Is something going on? I would immediately ask them about what's going on in their life. Instantly. That'd be the first conversation. What's going on here? Because speaking from the business standpoint, we would not have brought them into the company and hired them if we didn't see value in them. Right. Like there's clearly some tremendous value that we think you can bring to this business. And so if they're underperforming in a certain role, undoubtedly half the issue could be us. We could not be leading it well. We could have put the person in the wrong place. And so we want to find out, are you in the right place? So if the question is, what's going on with you? Like, where are you right now? And I hear struggle after struggle. Well, this thing doesn't seem to be working, and I can't figure this part out right. And I hear nothing but all of the challenges. I don't hear any of the joy behind it. I don't hear any of the part that they love.
Yeah.
Then I probably already identified that they're in the wrong place. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the next question will be, well, what would help you do this better? And then the answers that come beyond that, even if now we're talking about the transaction, what would help you execute on this transaction better? And what can I do to help you move the transaction along while you're going through these challenges that you just mentioned? And that person then, when you see this happen all the time, Tom, when that person says the thing that they're really good at, you see them light up.
Yeah. It
happens every time. The moment they say, well, if I could just do this, and you see their eyes move a little bit, and they see this little fire get in them, and you say, if I had this, I could make this work. Or if someone could show me how to do this, then I could do. And those are the moments where, as the CEO, I have to be paying closest attention. Then I have to notice, this is the thing that this person's lighting up about. Where in this organization can I put them? Yeah. Because if I can get them to look and feel like that all the time, they're going to outperform every time, not underperform.
Yes. So my dad and some partners started a wholesale paper distribution when I was a senior in high school.
Oh, wow.
And one day I'm in high school and I'm about to graduate, and my dad sort of randomly said, what business do you think I'm in? And I hesitated because I thought, this is a trick question, and I don't know where to go. And I said, well, I think you're in the paper business, right? And he said, well, you would think that. But I'm in the people business.
Right.
And then he went on to tell me, we manage customers, we manage our employees, we manage our investors, we manage people. Absolutely. And it just so happens that the result of our management of people produces sales.
Right.
So would that be your philosophy as well? Because I see you wearing multiple hats. Mm-hmm. So you're a men's pastor, mm-hmm. and you're managing people.
Yeah.
But you're a CEO of this large company, and you're managing people to produce results.
Right.
Is there anything that you would say to a leader today that fits those multiple hats that might be worn, that says, okay, you're not in whatever business you're in the people business?
That's right. We're all in the people business. And, we are, as much as we have an industry in which we work with the business I have, we want to see people grow. If the people are all growing, the business will grow.
Yeah.
Right. And that happens every time. So I often say it this way. I really don't see the two things as that separate at all. Right. Being a CEO makes me a better pastor, and being a pastor makes me a better CEO. I mean, those two things are for sure the case in my life. In fact, I would be worse at both if I weren't both.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are tasked or interested in helping business leaders in particular sort of navigate the sacred and the secular divide.
Yeah.
And in the last podcast, it seemed you and Todd really unpacked that in your life. You've navigated that well. You've drawn those two pieces, and you live your faith in business, and you live your faith in the context of your work and service in the church as the men's pastor. Do you find that men today struggle in making that connection? They can see the secular in their workplace, and they see their involvement in ministry, but they don't know how to bridge the gap between those two.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I think the mistake that's happening in in the leaders that are operating in both the secular and in the ministry area, the mistake that we're making is that we're dividing them in the first place. They're not divided. I'm one person. Right? And that part of stewarding this planet is commerce. Right? And it's part of us making sure that we live out our life in the faith is to live how God created us. And how did he make me? If he made me to be enamored with aerospace, which I am, if he made me enamored to be an engineer, which I was trained for, if he made me, it gives me joy to pursue things that no one's tried to do before, which I love to do as an entrepreneur. Like, if he made me that way, then I would actually be lying to myself if I didn't try to do that.
Yeah.
And so just being honest with me, I should dive into those things and steward those things just as much as I would steward a ministry where we're making sure that men are hearing from the Lord, right? And in both things, those are things I love. I should do those with the same vigor and the same work and the same conviction as unto the Lord in both areas. And so the moment I try to separate that and say, well, when I'm in ministry, I'm going to act like this because this is what it looks like to act like that, I'm pretending. I have to be who I have to be. I have to be authentic. And if I find myself in my business where I'm leaving the Lord completely out of it, where I'm not bringing the principles that I'm convicted by, then I'm also lying to myself. So I must run my business as with the same conviction I have in any ministry and vice versa. Otherwise, I'm being disingenuous in the first place. And who wants to follow a disingenuous leader?
I love that. No one.
No one.
No one.
Like, I know I don't. And I think every time somebody's tried, it hadn't worked out so well. So
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let me change direction just a little bit. When I look at you, I see a highly performing, very effective, efficient leader in so many areas. But there's something in the back of me that goes, how do you really make it work? I mean, how is your wife happy? Are your kids, do your kids love you? Are they adjusted? If we could interview your employees, would they say, oh man, Chris, I love working for Chris? I mean, how do you set the priorities of your life and manage them when you have such a full life?
Well, that, that is that's the toughest question. But it's not the toughest answer. I would argue that, or at least position that from the moment I got saved, one of my favorite verses was John 10:10, because I couldn't believe that the Lord could give me a life and life more abundantly, right? He also warned me that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But he came to give me life and life more abundantly. So I remember in the very early stages of me being a Christian that I would pray that. Like, well, I want a life more abundantly. That sounds awesome. What does that look like? I can't wait to have more life. And what I didn't realize is there were two parts to it. One is I was somewhat dead inside to begin with. So any fruit of the Spirit was life to me. And so he gave me an abundance of the fruits, and I'm grateful for that. But the other side of it is all of these things that he placed in front of me that he said, this is for you to steward. And, the greatest gift is my wife and daughter today. And I spend as much time as I possibly can with them. And the key to managing all of those things to me is more about prioritization and far less about balance. There's no such thing as balance. The word balance is in the Bible once, and it's referring to the scales of justice. It's not referring to a balanced life, right? I think there's what you see over and over in the Bible is descriptions of seasons, and descriptions of, if you're a farmer, you might work 15 hours a day for a season. You're not spending a whole lot of time. You don't have a balanced life while you're planting the crop. You don't have a balanced life when you're harvesting the crop. You're fully dedicated to planting or fully dedicated to harvesting. Yep. But over the course of a season, over the course of a longer period of time, there are then times when you sit there and just look at the crop and you don't do anything. And what are you doing then? You're probably sitting there with your kids or with your family, and you're saying, look at our crop. Look how much we have to be thankful for. And so I would submit that I do spend a lot of time doing that. We're empty nesters now. Hallelujah. But at the same time, I never missed a volleyball game. My daughter played volleyball all through school. She then decided to play track and soccer and everything else and softball when she was a senior. She played every sport her last year in school, and I never missed any of the games. We were always there. It's one of the beauties of being an owner of your own business, I would argue. It's a little tougher to do for some people. But what gives me the capability of prioritizing is control of the schedule. And there are times when that's really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times when I have to sacrifice something where, I've got an incredible client that wants to close a deal in a massive budget meeting that I have to be in. And at the same time, Pastor Robert wanted to talk to me. Like, something's got to give here. And neither one's going to be happy. And so something's going to be sacrificed in those moments. And those are the moments that I think that, count it all joy when we encounter trials. Those are the moments that refined my prioritization capabilities in me. Yeah. So today, I don't find those decisions as hard, and I navigate through them a lot easier. But there's been a lot of moments in my life where you get a real gut check. Like, what do you really care about? Which one are you going to choose right now? There's a lot of moments like that. So to your point, to me, it's more about prioritization and understanding what seasons I'm in, yep, where am I needed most, and really paying close attention to what the Lord's telling me about where he wants me most as well.
Yeah. So that's got to involve empowering people around you.
100%. Yeah.
To take a load. Do you spend a lot of time reflecting on what am I doing that no one else can do in the organization, and what do I need to let go of so that I'm able to keep my priorities?
Yes. Well, and I'm actually reading a book right now on that very thing, so I'm glad you brought it up, called Rocket Fuel. I suggest everybody read it. But a very wise mentor of mine once told me that one of the greatest things you could do to scale your business is find a great number two. Right? And if you don't have a great number two, you're probably going to hit a ceiling, a lid, pretty quick. And I saw that happening in my own business. And I've kind of been looking for that number two. I was looking for him for a while. I finally found him, and it's remarkable how much is being unlocked right in front of my eyes right now. Yeah. I've always had that person while I've been a pastor. I've got great number twos that have worked with me, and it has allowed me to do what I feel called to do without being all things to all people. And it's allowed me to stay focused, even to prioritize, because it allows you to say, well, here, look, this is where I'm good.
Yeah.
And when something else comes up that's not really my gifting, I say, you know what, as much as you want me to do that, I shouldn't be the person there anyway. Let me let it go and give it to that number two person who can do a better job with it anyway, which is empowering. And so even the scalability of what Todd and I talked about last time about meeting all the men, I think I want to meet every single man that goes to our church across all 10 campuses, and we want to meet them in person for an hour. But I can never do that by myself. But now we've got about 150 guys doing that. And we can meet every single person with 150 men. So empowering other people to do what you can't, absolutely essential to any kind of growth in any area, not just business or ministry.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the verses that's sort of our pillar verse here at the Executive Leadership Institute is Psalm 78:72. Talks about David shepherding them with the integrity of heart and skillfulness of hand. So you obviously prepared yourself skillfully. There's an acumen that you have that relates to business as well as ministry. But talk about the integrity issue. Was there a path that you took to develop integrity in your life, and how do you maintain it?
Yeah, I would. That's a good one, Tom. I don't know that there's a specific path. I think there is a kingdom path. For sure. But for those who aren't extremely mature in their understanding of Scripture in the first place, and so even if you're a new believer and you're just starting to learn some of the depths of Scripture, it's hard to find where is that. For a long time, you hang on to these things called life verses, right? And you say, I'm going to stick with that. And as long as those things don't waver from my life, then I'm hanging on to some form of integrity. But there's always situations and moments that I've encountered where I've found that gets challenged. And I'll give you an example where I've been in a situation where, I want to rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and give thanks to the Lord, always. And I want to do those things constantly. And yet I've been in a situation where somebody's maybe irritated me in my business, and I'm suddenly not joyful. I'm not praying in that moment. I'm certainly not giving thanks to anybody because I've gotten irritated or mad even. And in those moments, that's when your integrity gets challenged. Like, where are you going to go right now? Are you going to be mad at this person? Are you going to, what's about to come out of you, right? We talked a little bit about when there's pressure, the cracks are revealed, right?
Yeah,
but when there's pressure, you see what people are really made of too, right? And that's where the integrity tends to reveal itself or not. and I think there's been a number of situations where my response was not one of integrity. And it's not that I was, dishonest, but I wasn't godly in that moment. And so it wasn't a godly integrity. It was what was in me. I got angry, or I said something I shouldn't have, or I retaliated in a way, which is not what I'm called to do. So in those, I've been through a few of those in my business, and those can end up really painful.
Yeah.
Right. For everybody involved, and for me, they did too. And so I think having lived through a couple of those, and those are some of the scars. I think there's a song about that. Thank you for the scars.
Yeah.
But some of those have helped put I'd say, let me try it this way. They help put the boundaries on the lanes
Nice.
that today I get to operate in between.
Nice. And you're a guy that has many lanes in your life.
No, it's I joke, but it's true. Those are hard lessons. That's part of life, and I think that's why he says to count it all joy, right? Because you're supposed to learn those things. They don't feel joyful in the moment, but at the same time, that's when you learn what integrity is really about.
Yeah. Okay. One last question I've got for you. It has to do with. You mentioned when Todd was talking with you in the last podcast how significant your wife is and her influence in your life. Have you ever had a point where you thought you were kicking it on all cylinders at the office and at church, and your wife says, "Honey, the lights are on, but nobody's home." You're giving all of your energy and attention elsewhere. I need more of you.
Yeah.
And in those moments, what's your response? What do you do?
Immediately. Yeah, absolutely. Let's leave right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's go on a weekend trip. Do you want to go on a date night today? You're right, honey. I mean, if she feels that way at all, I would probably, I'd like to think today that I would sense it before it ever got to that point. But there were some times, years ago where she did say something and said, "Hey, we haven't gone and done something together, in weeks. Can we do that?"
Yep.
These days we have a date night every week, right? So we do that every week for
That's
sure.
awesome.
It's a little easier now that we are empty nesters, like I said, because we're not running around to some game that our daughter's involved in. But we make it a point to do that all the time. And we love our time together. I mean, we really do have a great time together. And we spend some time together every day. That is very important.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just brief, we do spend some time, have some dinner together, to talk at least, even if it's for just 30 minutes. But at least we're connecting there. I mean, we're connected because we live in the same home, but at the same time, we don't get into those moments where we haven't had any genuine connection.
Yeah.
And so having a little bit of that genuine connection all the time, and then deeper genuine connection on a very regular basis, we've kind of left those days in the past where that doesn't happen. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said it didn't come up once or twice before, and she was right. I mean, she was right. She's not afraid to tell me exactly what's on her mind. Maybe there's some of you out there like that, but my wife's amazing that way.
Well, I know how difficult it is when you wear many hats like you do to keep all the priorities. It seems like things of lower priority always press to get in front of something of higher priority. Mm-hmm. And to maintain the proper order it takes a lot of work and integrity.
That's right.
I want to say, way to go, man.
Well, thank you. I would tell you that's still to this day I find is one of the things I spend a lot of time doing. What are the priorities I have to focus on every day, right? Yeah. What are the things I need to do today? Yep. And that's where, spending some real quiet time with the Lord. Somebody asked me as my business was exploding a couple of years ago, they said, if with all that, you're traveling all over the world right now, your business is growing and growing, what are you doing to make sure that that's happening? I'm like, I'm spending more time with the Lord. So I had to get up earlier, which meant I had to go to bed earlier. And I got up an hour earlier every day just to make sure I spent more time. And I still to this day believe the busier and which I really don't like that word busy, but the more productive, more constructive, the more activity that's happening in my life requires that I spend more time with him. That's true. Requires it.
That's true. If you want to be a follower, then you have to spend time, don't you?
Right. And so many people, I even heard it, this week, will tell you, I just don't have time for that, and I just don't understand how I don't have time to not do that. Yeah. Right. It would be disastrous if that were to be removed from my life. So yeah, it's essential for the prioritization side, but really for my own personal health. Yeah. To spend some time with my Creator.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. It's been awesome to have these two podcasts with you, and may the Lord bless you in every arena that you serve and lead. You're an inspiration to us. Thank you.
Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you for Between the Lanes. This is an excellent resource, and I can't wait to see just how the Lord uses it to bless all the leaders out there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ending up, but I want to say to you, if you are aspiring to be a leader or you are a leader, we want to come alongside you. We want to help you to fulfill the role of leadership that you're called to in your home, in your business, and in your church, to do the very best that you can do. So let us help you. If we can do anything, check out our website. recommend our podcast, and we'll see you on a future podcast. God bless.
You got to be cool, fool. You can make it happen, Captain, but remember, you got to be funky.